Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, we are sifting through the noise. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Welcome back to this episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. I could not be more happy to be here today. Today is, I gotta be honest, I'm here, you're here. It's a great day. Things could always be so much worse than what they actually are at this moment. You know, my wife has been watching the news and keeping up with, everybody just, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're getting these emails, we're getting bombarded by all these messages of just horror and, horrible things that are happening in this world. And while it is very unfortunate and very sad to think about these stories of people who are suffering for something that we don't fully understand right now is just heartbreaking. And my heart goes out to them, to those people. I'm very empathetic to that. But at the same time, for my mental health, I have to take a moment and just say, but you know what? I'm okay and my family's okay. So I have to be thankful for that because, they are what means the most to me. And even though, I've had some bookings move around, as far as my photography business goes, and this is very inconvenient, that is the least of my problems right now, and family comes first. And at the end of the day, like I said, I'm safe and healthy. My family is safe and healthy. My extended family is safe and healthy as well. So I can't be anything but happy to be here today with you, because at the end of the day, it could always be a whole lot worse than what it is. So I am so glad that you are able to be here and listening right now in this, very unfortunate and crazy time in our world history, essentially. So thank you. That's all that I can say. There's a lot of things that you could be doing right now, but you are here. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I wanted to say this past week has been fantastic when it comes to the response that I've been getting in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook page. I've been going live every single day, except for Wednesday. I completely spaced it. Don't know what happened. Woke up late, e-learning with school and Charlie, and I just completely missed the entire Facebook Live, and I felt terrible about it. But we've been doing challenges. We've been focusing on challenges. We have been connecting together as a community. We've been talking about these fun ideas, staying creative when we feel most creative. And again, these challenges are fun things that I've been, putting together to try to encourage you to just, bring out the camera. I will be the first to admit that when I'm home, I very rarely want to bring out the camera. I don't feel in that very, that creative mode. But ever since, I've been forcing myself to grab it, I've felt a little bit more creative. I have felt, this because essentially I live in my house. It doesn't strike me as a visually interesting place, but when you're forced to bring out your camera, you're forced to look at everything around you a little bit different and in more of a creative light, because you still have to capture the best that you can. And these challenges have helped me do that. And it has been so awesome to see everybody who is participating in these Facebook Live challenges as well, just shooting the things around their house in just 5 minutes. It doesn't take anything extra but your camera, your kit lens, and then the house that you're in right now, and 5 minutes of your time. That's all that it takes. And my goal, 5 minutes every single day for a month, that's like, I think that's like 3 hours. Is that math right? Anyway, but that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. It's 4 hours. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and then 2. Yeah, that's more. That's 4 hours, So, oh no, that's 2 hours. So I'm terrible at math. So April, we go through all of April. And if you're doing these challenges, that's 2 hours of time behind the camera that you're shooting with intention. Again, to come out the other side of this thing as a better photographer than you did going in. And that's all that this is about. So if you're interested, come join me. Come join us. We're all here. It's on Facebook. So just go on Facebook. If you're not already a fan of the page, just go to Beginner Photography Podcast, and you will see the notifications for lives. We go live. I'm going live every day at 1 p.m. So that's it. Come join me. I wanted to take a moment. Like I said, I'm happy that everybody's here. I'm also really happy that there are listeners on the other side of this microphone right here who are getting a lot out of this podcast. And one of them in particular, I want to give a huge shout out to right now. And it's GWire67 for leaving a 5-star iTunes review. iTunes reviews don't seem like much, but they help the podcast out so much. And on top of that, hearing what you say helps me kind of connect that what I'm doing here in my office alone isn't really just me wasting my time, and that it really is helping you. So this week, GWire67 says, "This podcast has helped me become a better photographer. Often in nonprofit work, it's difficult to put into words what our donors are providing to the community. This podcast has helped me to better express this through my photography. Thank you." GWire67, I don't know who you are. I don't know what your name is, but so much thanks comes out of me and is being sent to you right now. If you are listening, be sure to shoot me an email. Let me know who you are. Just say, "Hey, that was me. I would love to thank you personally." And I hope that, if you're listening and you're not GWire67, maybe you have a similar story. Maybe this podcast has taught you something about photography, and if it has, I can't tell you how much leaving a review truly does help the podcast grow, get in front of new photographers, more experienced photographers who we can get on the show, and then share their information with you, the listener. So again, GWire67, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for your review. Now this week, again, I'm excited for this week because a few months ago, back in January, the end of January, it feels like a lifetime ago, I went to Imaging USA down in Nashville, and I sat in on a speech, a speech, I guess is what you would call it. An educational training by a woman named Mary Fisk Taylor. And I did not know of Mary Fisk Taylor before this, but the description of her speech was called Sifting Through the Noise. And it was all about, in a world of so many tactics and, ideas and do this right now and, Facebook Messenger and, do all these little things, she just broke it down and said, don't worry about any of that. That's overwhelming. If you're feeling overwhelmed, don't worry about any of that. Get back to the basics. And that is a proven way to sift through the noise. And what she said resonated not only with me a ton, but I knew that it was going to resonate with you. So got back to Indianapolis, sent her an email and said, "Hey, I got to get you on the podcast. What you shared needs to be heard by new photographers, by experienced photographers. It just needs to be heard in this photography community." So gracious, she came on, and this is going to be a fantastic interview that I know that you're going to get a ton out of, and especially premium members this week are going to get a ton out of this one. It's almost a masterclass of sorts, as Mary is just a genius when it comes to the business side of photography. And she says it herself, she's definitely more business-minded than photography-minded, but being business-minded gets her photo clients. And that ultimately, if you're running a business, is what is important. Sales are the lifeblood of any business. So in this episode, she shares so much all about creating email campaigns for photographers, why you need to, and what it is that you should be sharing with your list, how to use your marketing message. We're always taught that we need to have a marketing message, but what do we do with it? Mary shares it with us here today. She shares the best third-party marketing idea for family photographers I have ever heard. And if you're a family photographer, you need to hear this. The power of getting a no. Oftentimes we need to ask questions or ask for something from either clients or other vendors, and the power of getting a no, she shares, can really help grow you as a photographer. How to ask in the first place. We need to make a lot of asks. We can't build a business on our own. There's plenty of times where, once again, we need to ask a client or a vendor. and she tells us exactly how to ask. This was the bread and butter. This is what I was so excited to hear from her, which was how to create a story around your brand that will attract each and every single one of your ideal clients. So again, for premium members, all about growing your business, making money with your camera. If that's you, if you are interested in becoming a premium member, be sure to head over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and just click that premium membership button up at the top of the page, and you are in. So that is it. With that, we're going to get into this interview right now with Mary Fisk Taylor. Today's guest is Mary Fisk Taylor, a Richmond, Virginia fine art portrait photographer who co-hosts the Get Your Shot Together podcast. Today, I'm really excited to chat with her about sifting through the noise in this world of that is just full of photographers. So, Mary, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I was honored when you asked. This is amazing. I'm happy to be here.
This is one of these things that I love about, obviously our industry, about photography, just being able to meet with so many people. I had seen you speak at Imaging USA. We went down there in Nashville at the end of January.
Yes.
And so for those who haven't been before, you get like a schedule of everybody who's speaking, and there's a brief little description of what it is that they're going to be speaking about. And when I saw Sifting Through the Noise, I was intrigued, obviously, as there are just many photographers, and I know that a lot of beginners are kind of worried about the amount of, quote unquote competition that's out there. So I read more, and I thought, okay, I'm going to sit in on this class. And I sat in, and it was nothing of what I expected. It wasn't just like, you got to get out there and do better than everybody. It was so much more than being personally focused. And there was still a community focus around it, but instead of being better than everybody else, it was like, just love on your clients. And there was so much in there that I think it's lost in this photography community that, again, I'm so excited to chat to you about today and kind of dive deeper into some of that. But before we get started on any of that, can you share with me how you got started in photography? Like how this whole thing got started?
Wow, that's a great question. And it's funny because I've been doing this for a while and, teaching and sharing at, now things have changed so much. I get to sit here in my office and share and give back. But back in the day, because I've been doing this for 26 years, it was a lot harder, and you had to get out and go to events and share and speak. And I'm here because so many people did that for me. So let me just start with, first of all, this was all given to me in some form or another. Maybe I put my own thumbprint on it, but I didn't invent anything. So I actually got married to my amazing husband, and I'm still married. We have two awesome kiddos. That I got married, and I looked for a photographer, and I found this awesome photographer named Jamie Hayes. He's my business partner here in Richmond, and he photographed my bridal portraits, which is a big thing for us here in the South, and all these other things. And he just did such a great job. And I've always loved photography. I was involved with yearbook photography, and in college I always was the one taking all the pictures, and I loved photography. But I am a business person, and I was working in a law office and finishing up school, and thought I would go a different route. And when I had my daughter Alexandra, I said, oh, I've got to find that photographer, because he was so great. He needs to photograph this beautiful angel baby that I just, my sweet Alex. And I started taking Alex in, and one thing led to another. And I'd taken some time off from work, from my career, and he needed help. He had just opened his studio. He'd gone out on his own, and I started helping part-time, just like back in the day. This is film, obviously, stuffing proof books and, filing, and just doing little things just to get out of the house a little bit, because I was going a little stir crazy being a stay-at-home mom. And then I started photographing, and then within a year we were full business partners, and I just never looked back. I went to my first Imaging USA probably 24 years ago, and I looked around and saw all these, awards and medals and all these things that we have in our industry. And I thought, I found a place. This is where I want to be. And fast forward, here I am still in it, and, ticking off all the boxes, and still, gratefully very successful in professional photography. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's incredible. That's what an unconventional
Yeah.
journey that has been to get started in. So let me just clarify. You were working in law, you
Mhm.
had Alex, and you thought to yourself, you know what? I'm gonna
Find
take
that
a break.
photographer. Yeah. Oh yeah, take a break.
Uh-huh.
So, there's these amazing people that are built to be stay-at-home parents.
Hmm.
I'm not one of those.
Hmm.
So I felt so, and you're looking 24 years ago, so much, I felt so shameful about it. And my sister's like an amazing stay-at-home mom and crafty, not my lane. And so I just thought, well, I'll just go a few hours a week part-time. And this dude obviously needs help because he opened the doors and he's incredibly talented. He's a lifelong photographer.
Hmm.
All he ever wanted to be. Saved his mom's S&H green stamps to buy his first like Kodak 110. So if
Wow.
anybody even knows what that is. And I just wanted to do something outside of the house. And then I loved the business part of it. I only thought I'd ever be a part of the business behind the scenes because business is my thing. That's always been my thing. And then the creative bug kind of bit me, and I was like, well, I do love photography. And Jamie's like, you have pictures all over your house. You're always taking pictures. And so I, took all the classes and learned, how to be better at it and be more, maybe a little more, bring a little more structure into my
Hmm.
photography. And mastered that to an extent. But when the day is done, I just love the business of photography. I really do. That's my jam.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's funny. I too was really into, growing up. Yearbook. I was in yearbook as well, and going out and taking photos when you're in high school, when you're in middle school, is very different than
Mhm.
working and capturing photos in a professional sense. So when you had decided, you know what, I'm going to do this professionally, and I'm going to put in the work, and then you started educating yourself on the technical aspects of photography.
Right.
What did you find was the hardest part for you to either understand or fully grasp?
For me, um, I cannot pick up my camera or go into a session without both sides of my brain working because as much as I try, and I did actually, I'm getting a little better, but when I first started, I was, I couldn't just focus on the creativity. I was also thinking, how am I going to sell it?
Hmm.
What's going to look the best in their home? Are they going to buy it? So I had this right brain, left brain thing just going. So trying to make one side be a little bit quiet so I could just concentrate on the creativity was really hard for me. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah, it
I
does.
couldn't just photograph this beautiful child or family or wedding. I actually started mostly photographing, weddings. I was designing the wedding album in my head as I was photographing it. I just really needed to quiet that side of my brain a little bit and focus on the creativity. So that was probably my biggest struggle. And to this day, I still struggle with that.
So how do you overcome something like that? Because it
You,
makes sense from a business perspective. Like that
right,
sounds great,
right.
but being behind the camera, how do you overcome something like that?
Um, you do it by just talking yourself off the ledge kind of thing. Like, and this is kind of goes that sifting through the noise in your brain, noise. So whatever the noise is, we all have noise
Hmm.
in our life, right? Especially today, more than ever. And, just kind of taking that, 3 deep breaths and just, kind of talking myself into this is where you're going. Let's go into this space. You've got this. You can put this aside for a minute. And whether you want to talk about it as meditation or just that moment of quiet, but just focusing. So, with that being said, it's very hard for me to go. For example, if I were to jump off this podcast right now and then just have to rush into a session, I probably wouldn't be as prepared.
Hmm.
So, allowing myself that little bit of extra space and time to just get centered and ready for what was coming. But I kind of have to have this conversation with myself, my favorite person to talk to, because I always listen. Um, just have this conversation with myself that this is where we're going to go right now. And you can let that go for now. It's going to be okay. And I think, you know, growing up, I grew up, like probably most people. And, things are hard and things are challenging and everything. So letting go of that anxiety and letting go of that what if, and I need, just being okay with it and getting into that process. And I don't always succeed. I try very hard, but that's all I can do. I don't have any other really great magic potion or solution, but just trust in yourself, believe in yourself, and give yourself, if it's only 5 minutes, just to get ready to give that client, to give that person the best experience and the best of you.
I've talked with a lot of photographers on this podcast, and that's one of those things that I think is underlying. Like, a lot of people also need that, but nobody's ever explained it as well
Oh,
as
wow.
you have right there.
Thanks.
And it's interesting because as you were saying that, I was thinking about myself. Like, whenever I go to weddings, and I tell people, still to this day, I've been shooting, almost 10 years, and it's like, before a wedding, I just get butterflies in my stomach, and I sit there in my car, and I'm thinking to myself, today's the day they're going to find out I'm a fraud. Like,
Yep.
today is going to happen. But just giving yourself that 5 minutes and be like, okay, this is going to be the schedule of the day. Okay, I kind of understand where I'm going to be for these situations, and then letting yourself go with it from there really does help. Really does
It
help.
does. And whatever it is, some people have, maybe it's a song or something you read or something you do, but just, I mean, the thing that I repeat to myself a lot is, they hired you. They
Mm-hmm.
chose you. No one in the world can do what you do. Like, no one has my eye, my sense of timing, as good or bad as it is, you think it is, or whatever. They loved it. They loved it enough to give me money for it. So let that be your guide, and just go with that. And, you know, a wedding, as you know, once you get out of the car and you start, I don't have to think about it again.
Nope. Mm-mm.
That's the nice thing about weddings. It's busy and it's constant. So that keeps me in that flow. When you're working in your studio, maybe you are running between a sales session or consultation or a session, you're back and forth. So that I have to continually readjust back into a space if I go into the sales room. I try very hard to schedule my life, my days. I'm a big scheduler. I'm a big planner, and have my days where I only have sessions, or I only have consults, or I just have an office day where I can do things like this, or
Yes.
do my marketing or planning. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes we have to double up. Sometimes, we have to punt. So if I do that, then I have to readjust more. But weddings are a little bit easier, I think, for me to stay in that space than bouncing around in my studio.
Yeah, like you said, it's just one thing that you got to focus on. Like, you got one job that day, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can attest to that as well. So I'm interested now that we kind of got an insight into your beginnings. You've been shooting for 24 years, like you said, long
Mm-hmm.
time. You've been to PPA, or you've been a part of PPA and going to imaging for more than 2 decades.
Yep.
So in that time, having seen that transition from film to digital, aside from that, what do you think, or how do you think the industry has evolved most in that time?
Oh, a messaging and marketing. I
Messaging and
mean,
marketing.
yeah, digital was huge. We went through the digital transition, and I thought that was hard. That is nothing. That was a walk in the park compared to shifting from what I'll refer to or think about as traditional or classic marketing into digital marketing, social media marketing. Um, you know, let's like think back, so many years ago, to create a brochure, I had to go through all my negatives, pick my images. You would do a huge layout, you would send it to a printer, they would give you a blue line. You would have to get a minimum of like 10,000 copies of something, right, to
Jeez.
make it remotely affordable. It would take weeks and weeks and weeks to get a brochure or a stock card or anything. Now, oh, I think I'll do this. But we jump online, we grab the put it together. There's
Mhm.
like 3 million templates and every lab and printer across the country, and in 2 days you have marketing pieces.
Mhm.
So that's huge, and that's great. That's convenient. But it's the social media, it's the digital marketing that I had to either decide to get in line and get on board, or probably fail.
Mhm.
Because trying to interrupt a pattern on anybody's online experience right now, or get your email through, or make any type of a dent in social media, wow, that is I'm 51, so I'm not completely ignorant about it, but it was a major learning curve for me, because when I started, there were very few of us, because we all photographed film. We were medium format,
Mhm.
or 35 millimeter was just making its like coming into vogue. In wedding photography, we never used that in our studio.
Of course
Everything
not.
was
Yeah.
on Amamiya or Veronica or Hasselblad. Um, and you didn't have, you could just kind of drop your camera and get business. There
Mhm.
was just, there wasn't a lot. And then the market is much more flooded and there's way more choices, which is fine because I believe in competition and that's great. But, understanding how to get people's attention became a very big deal for me, so that's the biggest change for me as a photography studio owner and photographer.
So, like you said, 20 years ago, you could show up like, hey, guess what? Camera, medium format, like, we're good here.
Yeah.
I know what it is that I'm doing. And people would just come to you knowing that they don't know how to work a camera. So, you have to be the professional. Now
Right.
we're at this point to where literally anybody can get, 12-year-old kids can go to Target and buy themselves a DSLR if they
Hmm.
wanted to. So now
Hmm.
that everybody has a camera, as you said, there's a lot more, well, I guess for lack of a better term, noise here,
Yeah,
right?
a lot more noise.
So how in that time did you figure out as the noise grew? How did you figure out how to sift through it and make your mark?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it took me a while. It really did. I floundered for a while trying to figure it out because you get digital. You have digital, the digital cameras and that option. And then you have this free, and I'm using air quotes, which is weird to do on a podcast because you can't see me doing that. But you get this free avenue of marketing, or at least that's the bill of goods we sell ourselves. So you have an email, right? So we have all these opportunities and you think, I'll just do this. And you just start kind of doing what everybody else is doing. Well, nobody notices what's the same. We notice
Hmm.
what is different. So what I realized, and as you may or may not know, I'm a huge Donald Miller story brand girl. Like I'm a big fan. And I read that book many, many years ago. And I'd started doing it beforehand, but that really drove it home for me. The reason we continue to be successful and still produce very well in our studio is what I realized is we had to stay true to exactly what we did with film. Like we tried to, what about 2 years into digital, I realized, wait a minute, just rewind and do everything the way you did with film. You just don't no longer have the film, but don't overshoot. Don't go out and do everything that comes down the pipe just because you can. Don't mess with your brand. Stay true to what we've always done, which we sell mostly large wall portrait installations. We do a lot of brush oil and now painter work, and then some higher end weddings. That's what we do. We kind of got digital cameras and thought we would just do everything. We
Yes.
actually at one point picked up a school. Like, what were we
Oh.
thinking? That's just not who we are. Like, we were terrible because we wanted to pose every single child. Let's give them a butterfly light. No, let's do, like, it's like, this is a school picture. This is
Yeah.
not our lane. Get out of that, get back in our lane. And making sure that everything I show, every email I send, every campaign I create is on brand. And for me, that's showing us either creating wall portraits in, communicating or working with clients, installing client work, and showing products, not just showing pretty digital picture after pretty digital picture after pretty digital picture. If we do that as a professional photographer and what we do, that's what they see all day long on their iPhone or
Mhm.
their Android or whatever, or their computer. If I'm showing us installing a beautiful 30 by 40 brush oil family portrait in a living room, people go, oh, wait, that's different. So my best advice is show what you do, show what you want to sell. Don't just fall into, because it's easy, oh, I just shot this, I'm going to, Wi-Fi it to my camera and just push it out on social media. Make sure it's incredibly intentional and there's amazing content behind it, because people don't know what's different anymore. They can look at pretty pictures all day long.
Mhm.
So that's what I had to stop doing. And that's probably the biggest mistake I made in the beginning of all of this.
So I love that. Great story. And if anybody's listening, I don't know if you heard, but Donald Miller did a podcast with Andrew Helmage of the Photo Biz Exposed podcast, which was all focused around photography, which was really interesting
Yeah.
to listen to. And what came through for me, obviously, the power of a story is really important. But I think when we first get started, maybe we don't know what that story is yet, right? We don't know what it is that is incredibly important to us. Did you always know from the beginning, or is that something that evolved with you as well?
I knew it, but I didn't know it. So until I really sat down and I loved it so much. I'm a certified guide with
Hmm.
Donald. Like I did the whole thing. Like I'm all in with this. And I love education anyway, so it's probably no surprise to people who know me that I did that, but I'm really a believer in it. And, you know, I knew it, but I didn't know it until I really had to break it down. And the whole idea of a story, I think the word story is a big word, and
Hmm.
maybe we don't understand. The whole idea of a story for us as small business owners is opening a story loop and inviting people in. And not because we're the know-it-alls, but because we're going to guide you and we're going to solve a problem for you. That's when people get involved in a story.
Hmm.
They get involved if something catches their eye and they're like, ooh, if I don't do this, I'm going to miss out, miss this milestone moment, miss this opportunity, right? That's when they go, oh, I should probably engage with that. That's how you get their attention. And then it's just my job to guide them. Let them be the hero. Let them stand out. Let them shine. It's not about me. It's about them, because no one wants to hear about me.
Right.
I mean, hopefully somebody will
Well,
listen
I
to the
do. That's
podcast and
why,
want to
yeah.
hear about this. But as a business owner, people want to, they've got to see themselves in the story. So if you don't open a story loop that they can relate to, or they can see themselves in, or that it's solving a problem that they may or may not know they have, it's not going to make a difference. And that's what story brand really is, in my opinion, or that's what it is for me. And I knew that, but I didn't know it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't, it had to kind of be spelled out, and I went, oh, okay, now, yes, I see that. And that was huge. That was a paradigm shift for us as a small business owner, major.
Would you suggest if somebody's still struggling to try to figure out maybe what is the story that they're trying to tell, to still even go forward with story brand, or is that the book? Is
I read
that
the book. Yeah, I read the book.
mhm. Go ahead.
Go online. It's a free little, it's a free exercise that they offer online that you can do, and just start filling it out. We all, I think, as professional photographers, the story we're trying to tell is, as my friend Jeff would say, we're freezing time. We're
Mhm.
capturing time in whatever way that is. Your style may be completely different from mine, and so on and so on and so on. But all of us, I think, when the day is done, would say, my goal is to get my camera, which is just the instrument I happen to use, and freeze these moments so that you never look back and regret not having them.
Yeah.
And not only that, we want you to, for me, it goes a little further, because for me, it's, I want them printed, and I want them proudly displayed and gracing the interiors of your home. And I want your children to look at them and feel pride because they see how much you love them, and all of that stuff. Maybe for you, it's different, but all of us, wouldn't you, maybe, I don't know, do you agree, is we're just trying to freeze time
Hmm. Hmm.
because we have no control over it any other way. It's going to happen.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about sifting through this noise. Do you think that simply having that as your message of, hey, look, I'm just trying to freeze time here is enough? Does it need to go deeper than that? Or how do you put your own personal spin on that to make your business stand out?
You are listening to the free version of the Beginner Photography Podcast, where each week you learn how world-class photographers see and capture the world around them. If you want to hear the extended interview with their best business tips to learn how to make money with your camera, then become a premium member today by heading over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and click the premium membership button to join now.
You know what? It's clear to me that that you are living, breathing proof of this mindset, right? Of doing this yourself. And it is something that a lot of people struggle with. You're absolutely right. And just understanding that unfortunately there is no magic pill, I think I think is part of the problem. And as you said, like, we have to understand the real power of our photography. As you said, the photographers who, once they figure that out, then they soar, is just proof to that. And I want to share a quick little anecdote real quick with you, because it just reminded me of this. And that is, a few years ago, there was a couple here locally who, they got married 6 or 7 years ago, I suppose. And their photographer just like skipped town right after they got married. So they never ever got their wedding photos. And every year on their anniversary, it was very tough for them because, you know, they'd end up posting on Facebook, like, still all these years, no wedding photos. They ended up moving to New York, which was crazy, this photographer. Well, on the 5th anniversary of their wedding, her grandfather, who was the one who walked her down the aisle, had passed away just weeks before and made it like especially hard. And she's
Oh,
like, we told the photographer that that's like the only photo that we wanted, and we got none of those. Well, my wife is a friend of theirs,
mm,
so she's like, hey, you should reach out and like do something nice for them. And I was like, that's a great idea. So just in getting ready for this, just in talking with her, to hear how much pain it caused her, and she didn't lose the memories of her wedding.
mm,
She didn't lose those, but there was a physical copy. There's something about having that physical copy of looking at her wedding date that she no longer has
right,
that makes it painful. And regardless of whether or not she doesn't have the memory, she still doesn't have that photograph that she can look at and remember that moment of being with her grandfather. And for me, like a light bulb went off at that moment. Like, wow, this is extremely powerful. And
right,
we as photographers do not take this seriously. We look at this as if it's just a tool. Like, we look at this camera, all that I got to do is set these settings, snap the photo, and then we're set. That's all that we got to do. But there's so much of an emotional tie to photography, and I just want to say thank you for sharing your insight there when it comes to pricing, because it is very difficult, and
hmm.
coming up with that mindset is wonderful. One more time, can you share the name of that book for me? It was just called Mindset.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that it?
Carol Dweck, Dweck. It's been rewritten it's been like revised over the years because it's been around for a while. But it's Mindset, Carol Dweck, Dweck. If you look her up, it'll come right up. It's
Okay.
amazing book. There's amazing exercises about it online. I make no money off any of these books I recommend. I just love them so much, and they've given me so much. And as you know, when I talk about Sift Through the Noise, it's that type of education that I've really relied on heavily. These people are way smarter than me, so I follow their lead and hopefully make the best choices I can. But
Yeah.
thank you
Uh,
so much.
of course, I'm going to link to that in the show notes as well, because I'm sure that there are people out there who could really benefit from something like that. So again, thank you.
Sure.
Um, Next, I want to know, for somebody who's been in this industry for 2+ decades,
Mhm.
what do you think is perhaps a misconception or something that most people would be surprised to find out about um, being a photographer today versus 20 years ago? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no. Okay, so well, I don't know if you don't have an agenda, so I would say I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for, but I know that you don't even have a clue what I'm going to say. So I know that that's not even a remotely good answer. But let me tell you this: I came into this industry when it was very much not a lot of women in it. There were some amazing women in it. Do not let me, I mean, amazing women that were my mentors: Helen Yancey, Ann Monteith, people that Marvel Nelson, maybe that you guys may or not know, but they were Joyce Wilson, just phenomenal. But it was very male dominated, and I came into it, and I never thought, I didn't have that mindset, and I didn't believe I could be much. As a matter of fact, one of the first conventions I went to, I said to a gentleman, I'll call him that, and I said, "Oh, maybe one day I could volunteer and help out at the state level, or maybe I could be on PPA council or something." Because I had this, political background. That was my jam when I was in college and grad school. I'm an MBA. Like I loved all that stuff. And he went, "You'll never be that." And I just kind of took that as, well, he's a very respected man, and that's probably the way it is. And then I kind of got mad, and then I got a little madder, and then I just moved along. And you know what? I just started volunteering and giving to this industry, like giving this podcast today. But back then it was maybe working on a committee or volunteering on a PPA committee or getting out and doing a little local photo class for people, or, going into Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or whatever it is, just giving back to this industry. And things changed, and I got to be friends, and then I started teaching. And I'm on the PPA board of directors now. I'll be PPA president next year, and I've ticked all those boxes. But the change for me, and I hope for anybody that hears this, is don't let anybody tell you you can't charge this, you can't be this, you can't do that. Because I'll tell you what, as Mary Fisk Taylor is sitting here right now, who grew up with a single mom. And I lost my dad when I was very young, and no silver spoons around my household. And, and persevered and persevered. I sit here today and tell you that, my husband and I have built a beautiful life together, but professional photography has been a big part of that. It's allowed me to be a part of that family, give and be a part of my kids' lives, and provide them a really great life, and not have to worry the way I did. And I can be a PPA counselor, or I can be whatever I want. So
Yes.
that's been the biggest change for me. If I want to look at 24 years, a pivotal moment for me was the day that I decided that man was not right. And I hope that if any of you guys have been told no, or you can't, whether it's your pricing or be a photographer or whatever, you can't, get this degree or do this or that, I hope you tell them and show them that they're absolutely wrong.
Oh my gosh. What a story.
I don't tell that story a lot. I like when you hit me with that, I was like, huh, what has been that's I don't really remember what I ate for breakfast, but I'll never forget that moment. I can see it, smell it, dream it. Like I will never forget that moment. It's been 24
Wow.
years. I'll never forget it.
Wow, I'm very happy that you decided not to listen to that man and decide
Thank
to
you.
forge your own path and do what it is that you wanted to do, and end up where you are here today. Because I can tell you that not only hearing you talk in person, but seeing the other people in the audience as well, that you are making a change in these people's lives, and that you're doing great things. So thank you for not listening to whoever that was.
But
Yeah.
you're very welcome, and
Yeah.
thank you for saying that.
Oh man. Oh, now I got, even me, I got like endorphins going. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm kind of upset about that whole situation. But it's very exciting. I got just one last question for you before I let you go. Um, as a you do print competitions as
I
well, or
do.
you
Yes,
you judge print competitions as
I
well, right?
do.
Okay.
Hmm.
So this is a world that I've never entered into myself, and I've spoke with people like Jerry Guiones, who's talked about the power of the album, the wedding album, and having something printed. I've always been interested in, like, as a judge for
Hmm.
you, what is something that, I mean, right away you'll look at an image and tell yourself, oh, this is from a professional or this is from an amateur.
Yeah. So first of all, image competition is a big part of my journey in photography, and I know it's made me a better photographer, hands down. And that's my journey. That may not be yours or your listeners, but when I'm looking at work, the first thing I do is if I hear a title, and the title can go either way, but if there's a title and a story spins around and it just grabs my heart, meaning that impact, that emotional storytelling journey is there. And this could be a landscape, it could be an abstract, it could be a portrait, it could be a wedding image. You know, for me, losing my father when I was so young, you give me a daddy daughter dance, or, I mean, and it spins around, my heart is in. And then I'm going to look for technicals. So
Mhm.
I feel like the difference sometimes between, let's just call it a merit or not merit, whether it's
Mhm.
professional or not professional, whatever it is, the difference for me is it's got to be technically, it doesn't have to be flawless, it doesn't have to be perfect, not for me. Every judge is different, everybody's different, but it does have to be technically proficient. So if it's underexposed, or certainly focused, or it's not flat light, what I mean, those are things that I think that's not meritorious work.
Mhm.
But if you've got you've got the technical proficiency, and you grab me in a story, or it's just so beautiful what you captured, I'm all in. Now
Mhm.
that's me as a judge. Everybody's different, but you know what? We just had our image competition here in Virginia. We had 740 some images go through, and I'm the JC, and I watched every one of them. And I remember some of them as if it was yesterday that we looked at them, because, and you know what? Some of them were for brand new members, brand new to photography, but gosh dang, their eye and their energy came through, like fireworks. So
Wow.
it just doesn't matter how long you've been in this business or not. It's just, sometimes you just get that image and it just sings. And if it makes you tingle and, makes your heart beat a little faster, I'm all in. That's
Mhm.
me. That's how I would judge. That's how I do it.
Do you think that that's something that a photographer has to become aware of seeing in their own work?
I think so. I
Hmm.
think that, I mean, you're photographing a wedding or something, and you get that shot and you go, "Pah," you know it, or you're
Mhm.
photographing that kiddo, or that moment between a mother and a child, and your skin prickles a little because you know you got it, and then you go,
Yeah.
shoot, I hope the flash went off, or I hope I was. Now then that little prayer comes into
Yeah.
play. But when
Mm.
as an artist, when you get that special moment. And look, there's a lot of great moments that maybe don't make your heart beat a little faster, but sometimes it's just those things. And I'm not saying that everything has to be that, because if it's a technically great image and it's well done, I'm also going to reward that. I mean, I'm a photographer, but those are the ones that really sing and stand out for me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mary, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today. I've had so much fun talking to you about this whole industry and as you said, sifting through the noise and really standing out. So I have to thank you. But before I let you go, can you let the listeners know where they can find out more about you online?
Absolutely. Mary Fisk Taylor, maryfisktaylor.com, or you can look me up at social media. You can hit me up there. And Kara Derryberry from Tallahassee, Florida, and I have a podcast called Get Your Shoot Together. And you can find it on any of the podcast thingy doos that you look up. But happy to support this great podcast of yours. Thank you for what you're doing. It's a really great service to this industry, and I really appreciate you having me on today.
What did I tell you? What did I tell you about listening to Mary? It is uh, her message just comes through loud and clear. And I think, what's great about talking to somebody who is really good at business, even if you're not talking to her about business related things, she has a very clear type A head of what are the most important things that we need to be focusing on right now. And I think that she shared so much about that through photography in this interview, and in just such a nice and caring and helpful manner that I know that you as a listener got a ton out of this episode. Now, my biggest takeaway, I cannot wait to hear what your biggest takeaway was for this one. My biggest takeaway was just how strong Mary is. And, she wasn't going to be told what she could and could not do. I've never been in that situation. I can't imagine what I would do if I was. It's a great chance that I would just, just give up. Just say, what am I doing here? And then just give up. We look at these people of a different caliber, of a higher caliber, as these pillars of authority, when really art is just so subjective that I'm sure that maybe you have been told at some point that maybe your photos aren't good enough, or that there's just so many photographers that you're never going to make it. And when you're early on in your journey, as you may be right now, it is just so easy to get discouraged by something like that, especially when you feel like it's coming from somebody who, from a place of authority or of experience. But Mary, what she shared here was that if you love something, just do it and go hard at it. That is what you need to focus on, and don't worry about anybody else. As I said, photography is so subjective. There's so many different ins and outs and nuances to photography that no photographer will be the same as any other photographer. And your work will stand out. It will stand out once you find your voice. And that just simply takes time. So if you're in the beginning stages, don't get discouraged. Again, I want to hear your biggest takeaway from this episode. Feel free to share it in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. To join, all you got to do is head over to Facebook and search Beginner Photography Podcast. Come on in. We'd be more than happy to help you. More than happy to have you and help you in any way that you need. And again, I'd love to hear your biggest takeaway. So that is it for this week, guys. Don't get out. Stay inside. Be safe. Explore your neighborhood if you can, but most importantly, be safe. And now more than ever, we have to make do. We have to make more, we have to do more, and we have to make do with what we got, because I promise you it is better than you think. So that is it. Again, I will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.